two key questions, and you can think about it during the presentations that will be coming up after this. But the idea is to first help us to think about what were the key highlights from the week for you. I'm going to be giving an overview of the key highlights that we've distilled from discussions with the session conveners, the symposium conveners, and the scientific steering committee. But of course, you may have an idea that needs to be included also, and certainly we'd like to hear from you. The other thought is that we'd like to know how has your thinking changed? How has this symposium altered your outlook on climate change and the world's oceans? And so likewise, we'd like to hear what take-homes you have come to from being at this session, and what is different in your thinking as you head home. And this allows us to not only gather that information within the symposium organization team, but it also helps you to think about how you might communicate the results of this symposium to others at your home organization. Okay. Okay. All right. For you latecomers, the idea is that you need a white, if you don't have a white piece of paper that has been handed out there, you should grab one. And what we're looking for is to get information on your impressions of the symposium. And there's two types of questions. On the first side, we want you to talk about what were the highlights that you got from this symposium. I'll be presenting the results of what came out of the discussions with the symposium conveners, the session conveners, the scientific steering committee, but you might have some clever ideas that none of us thought of. And the other piece would be to think about how has your thinking changed, and how will you communicate that back to your own organization? And we'd really like you to think about that during the next few minutes while we go through the next piece. The other piece that I want to remind you, and I said this this morning at the opening session, we are seeking presentation. Tracy Gill, I think, is still here. And if you didn't make it to the announcements for the opening session, we are looking for seminars that can be put up onto a NOAA seminar series that's distributed widely, and it doesn't have to be a U.S. citizen. We'd like presentations from anyone, and so please contact her, and her email address is here. And then please remember that you will be contacted by the symposium organizing committee to get an online survey on we want your input on what the 5th effects of climate change on the world's ocean symposium should look like, and what worked, what didn't, and how can we do a better job when we start planning for the next one. Okay, any questions on that? Yes. Right. So Tracy, do you want to give the question was, can you explain a little more about the online seminars?
Sure. And also we have a list. If you want to get added to our seminar list, there's 5,300 people and 2 emails on it. So you can just send me an email and say, add me to your weekly NOAA seminar email list, and you will get on it. If you're in the U.S., I can't pay anybody, but you can give a webinar from anywhere in the U.S. or Canada, and we'd love to have you, and it'll go out to the list. And it's a great way to get your work out there. Even we welcome students. We'd love to have student work. Anybody's work is welcome as long as it's related to science and atmosphere, or oceans and atmosphere. So the format is 1 hour over our lunchtime. It's a brown bag. People are eating their lunch. It's very relaxed, very friendly, low key. It's a great seminar. So there's 40 seminars at NOAA. So this is all of them are listed on this seminar list. And there's a website called, just Google NOAA Science Seminar, and you'll find it email me if you have any questions.
Okay. So now I have the fun job of kind of trying to sum up what we have accomplished during this time together. And just by the numbers, we're all scientists here. So there were 669 registrations from 51 countries. There were 18 sessions, 11 workshops. Oh, I'm sorry, there were 4 town halls. The slide didn't get updated. 4 receptions, 13 plenary speakers from 13 nations, 350 oral presentations, 158 posters, and 102 students. So let's give ourselves a... All right. How did we do geographically? You can see the statistics again. 2015 was the 3rd Effects of Climate Change on the World's Ocean Symposium, and we have almost doubled that. Now, granted, there's a big North American contribution, but if you can see as you split this out geographically, we are increasing our numbers throughout the world, and this is really a positive sign for the symposium and the interest that we're gaining in terms of other regions of the planet and in terms of reaching out to young scientists throughout the planet. Now, I'm not a Twitter person. I am on Twitter, but to tell you whether these are good statistics or bad statistics, you people who are Twitter people will know whether this is a good thing or a bad thing. But anyway, we are making ourselves known worldwide, and I'm happy for it. And certainly, if you haven't tweeted, please do, so we can increase our statistics. At the beginning of this meeting, there were some key messages that Jason brought forward. He wanted us to think carefully about what are the big picture things that he thought that we would cover. The first one, of course, is oceans matter. They are an important element in the climate cycle, and we certainly need to pay attention to them. Oceans are changing, and there's much at stake in terms of global climate change. We are certainly advancing our understanding of the changes and risks associated with climate change, and we are endeavoring to find solutions to the climate change that is likely to occur no matter what between now and 2050, and then to look at futures after that. And so that I just wanted to remind you before I went forward of the sort of overarching themes of this symposium. So what have we gained? The first sort of take-home message, and you'll see a little red box in each of my slides now. The oceans and the social ecological systems that depend on them are changing, and we are seeing species on the move. We are seeing borealization, which is a new term to me, of the Barents Sea with similar signals occurring in the Bering Sea, and perhaps even similar signals in Antarctica. Certainly, the take-home message from the Arctic is what my favorite one from Fran Ulmer. What happens in the Arctic doesn't stay in the Arctic, but you can see this region is changing rapidly, and society is taking note of it. The second sort of key takeaway from all of this is our understanding of the social ecological systems has improved to allow us to contrast the ecological and human impacts under different future scenarios. And those coupled biophysical and social integrated programs are providing opportunities to look at what is our ability to adapt to the future. And many of them are saying that our adaptation options are going to be more limited if we remain on the high emissions scenario. And of course, some of the key favorite quotes from this was Manuel's, "Inaction is maladaptation," and Greta Pessel saying, "Adapting to species redistribution requires all hands on deck." And I must say, this is a figure from Kirsten Holtzman's talk, and certainly to pull one of these fully integrated social, ecological, integrated climate research programs together does take all hands on deck. The third take-home message is that tactical and strategic opportunities for adaptation to climate change have been revealed through engagement. And there's been a concerted effort to try and reach out to communities that are impacted by climate change. And instead of a top-down sort of, this is how you should adapt approach, we have found that there's much better buy-in and uptake of different adaptation strategies when you work locally and engage the stakeholders from the get-go. And two quotes here that are related to this are, "The narrative dictates how you see change," and certainly I think that was a useful sort of quote in terms of thinking about how you present these adaptation options, as well as adaptation planning is an ongoing and iterative process. It isn't as if you can come in there once and be done. The next piece is that Alistair Hobday indicated that applications and discussions with managers first and science papers second. And we are building the bridge to the gap between the natural and social sciences. The fourth one is that extreme events provide an opportunity to assess human and ecological responses to climate change. It's essentially a stress test, and our ability to predict anomalous ocean conditions on seasonal to decadal timescales is improving. And this is a figure from Mark Payne showing that there are regions of the planet where you can have relatively good correlations between the predicted and observed climate situation in regions of the world. And certainly this will be useful in terms of looking at extreme events, and those extreme events allow us to have a chance to rehearse for the future. The fifth one is that research continues to reveal complex, energetic, and physiological trade-offs associated with adaptation to changing environmental conditions. And there are energetic and physiological costs to that adaptation that must be recognized. And this was recognized in the third Effects of Climate Change in the World's Ocean Symposium. But certainly what is new in terms of this one is the idea that one must look at the entire journey and life cycle of the species and all the multiple stressors that that particular organism experiences. And innovations exist to reveal mechanisms causing changes in growth and mortality and energetic-based movements. And of course, the great one that everybody remembers is the idea of rejoicing in variability. The sixth one is that coastal communities are turning to aquaculture, marine ranching, fish attraction technologies, and the like to fill critical needs for food security. And research is needed to identify the appropriate adaptation actions and good governance through stakeholder engagement and representation. And I think the promising piece of this is that the FAO has published guidelines for small-scale fisheries, which may help in terms of guiding how those small-scale fisheries should be moving in the future. The seventh one is that we can't forget that we need good data. It's easy to build models, it's easy to have cool laboratory experiments, but in the end, you're going to need to have targeted measurements that help you identify things like carbon uptake, ocean acidification, deoxygenation. And global observation networks are going to be critical, and the technological advancements associated with them are going to improve our understanding of key processes, and we need to move ahead on this. The eighth one is that blue carbon solutions are emerging. And you can see that those sort of blue carbon ecosystems are located in regions throughout the world. And certainly we heard this morning that mangroves are a major piece of this. But there are options for moving forward in terms of carbon sequestration. And finally, the international planning and assessment activities that are happening in bodies that are more global than just our regional activities are certainly guiding and informing our research. The Sustainable Development Goals, the IPCC, the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, all of these things are relevant. The one thing that I think all of us have realized throughout this meeting is that it's not just Sustainable Goal 14. It's number 2, it's good health, it's climate action, it is decent work, it is sustainable communities, it is gender equality. We're seeing peace and justice and no poverty. And so you can tell that the majority of these sustainable goals do have links to the ocean, and one could argue even those that I haven't circled are probably candidates for this as well. And so I want to end with sort of a thought of where we're going. There are some new science activities that are coming forward. Genetics and into looking at what the scope is for adaptation, advanced technologies, big data, artificial intelligence, local community adaptation planning, and skill assessment in communities. These are all things that we are on the cusp of integrating into our research activities, and we expect that we will see much more of this. My last slide is my introduction to Bas, and I hope that you guys are ready for it. He has his final presentations. This is his reminder that it is